lineman in this class.
I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championships.
The rivalries, it's up there on top of the list, man. And if we allow them to devalue it, we lose a lot of what makes college football special. Don't let them do it. Don't let them devalue what it means to you. And welcome to JUCK on Bucks on a Friday morning. Appreciate you so much for joining me. It is Friday. That means we've got yet another week down of the off season. We can check one more off the box here. I was looking back at things I was doing, like show topics this time last year, and trying to project forward like the next month. What are we going to be talking about? Because it's, it gets kind of boring for a little spell there where there's not much going on. So if you got any ideas, feel free to leave those in the comments. Anything you'd like to see me hit on. But I wanted to talk today about Dane Bugler putting out his mock draft. So Dane Bugler works for The Athletic, noted Ohio State fan. And obviously the Buckeyes we've been talking about forever, going to be going for this all-time record, the all-time record of 15 draft picks in one single draft that was set by Georgia in 2022. Now, Ohio State and LSU share second place honors on that with 14 guys picked. For the Buckeyes, that was in 2004. LSU tied them in 2020, and that was obviously their 2019 national championship team. For Georgia, that was their 2021 national championship team. For Ohio State, that was their 2002 national championship team, but that was the 2004 draft that so many of those guys ended up going out. But all three of those teams obviously win national championships. And when you move down that list to the two teams that are tied for fourth place, you've got yet another Buckeye team. And that was the 2016 Buckeye team. 2016 Buckeye draft, 15 teams, so another national championship team. In 2018 Alabama. Both of those teams had 12 picks. So what we're saying here is, out of the top five best drafts by one school in one class, Ohio State makes the list 2 times. Now they go for it a third time to attempt to be the holder of 3 of those teams out of the top 6. So Alabama, Georgia, LSU, and Ohio State 3 times. That's what's about to happen here, whether they break that 15 record or not. Michigan tried to break this last year. They could not get into that top 5, and they sure thought they were. They were very proud of all their combine invites, though. They did get more combine invites than Ohio State did this year. So if the Buckeyes can get in to that top 5 and own 3 of the top 6 draft classes ever, that would be pretty ridiculous. Shouldn't come to a surprise to anybody who really follows college football, just how dominant Ohio State has been when it comes to the NFL draft and pumping out talent. But for some reason, there are a lot of people, particularly in the South. I used to think they were just being disingenuous, but they really don't look at Ohio State in the same way they look at other programs down there, which has always just befuddled me, but it is what it is. I think it has a lot to do with Ohio State just being consistently dominant over years, but not ever having a time period in our lives where they've rattled off 2 national championships in 3 years. I think when you do that, it cements it more into dumb people's brains that you actually are really, really dominant. The good news is I think we got an opportunity to do that. But Ohio State, 3 of the top 6 classes, pretty damn dominant. And when we look at, I was watching John Gruden. I'm sure you guys probably saw that John Gruden video the other day. John Gruden gets a box full of goodies, national championship goodies from Ryan Day from Ohio State for how he treated Will Howard when he went on and did his thing with John Gruden. And Gruden's opening all these boxes. And as he's doing it, he's naming off Ohio State legends. Of course, Gruden from Ohio. And he's naming legends at every different position. And as he's going, like, it is just, even for those of us who talk about this on a daily basis, the names that are coming out, you're just like, oh yeah, Ahmed Plummer. Yeah. It was so cool to hear. And he seemingly had it at the tip of his tongue, which was great. He'd be a fantastic guest on the show here. We could really run off some names. But here's how Bugler sees this NFL draft going down, which is how I see it as well. And that is 15 guys drafted, everybody except for G. Scott and Josh Fryer. So here's his order. He's got in the first round, Emeka at number 29, Simmons at number 31. Then he's got at number 39, Travion, At number 44, Quinshon. 46, Tyleek. Pick 48, Donovan. Pick 60, JT. Pick 72, Jack Sawyer. Pick 78, Ty Hamilton. Pick 134, Lathan. 143, Will Howard. 164, Denzel Burke. 169, Seth. 204, Cody Simon. And 211, Jordan Hancock. So 15 Buckeyes, tying Georgia's record, which would mean Ohio State tied for number 1 with Georgia, tied for number 3 with LSU, and then tied for number, what would that be then, guys? 5 with Alabama. And that's pretty cool. I think that's awesome. So I'm sorry, Dylan. I got yelled at today, guys. So my buddy Dylan texted me and he said, have those gold pants always been there? And I said, yeah, they've always been there. And he said, well, I just noticed them today. And I said, I probably bumped the microphone and made him shake. He said, stop that. I apologize. I just did it again. I don't know why I'm bumping the microphone. A clip of Will Howard went around with him talking to some NFL execs the other day. And Will Howard telling him how coming out of high school, he wanted to go to Penn State. He wanted an offer from Pitt, from Syracuse, all those guys. And he tried so hard for years and he never got it. So he goes to K-State and he just wanted to prove them all wrong. He wanted Penn State to look back and say, Will Howard, we let him get away. He wanted him to regret it. And he said to the NFL executive, I don't even know who it was. I don't follow the NFL, as you guys know, except for the Cleveland Browns and loosely in the last couple of years. But he said, I wanted them to regret it. And he says to these guys, draft me or you're going to regret it, which was really cool. I love his confidence. I don't know how you guys feel about Will Howard. I mean, he's a national championship winning quarterback at Ohio State. It doesn't get much better than that. But when it comes to this new era of these transfer portal guys, I try my best. But when we look at the guys, for instance, in this class of 2021, those guys that we just rattled off that are going into this draft, guys like Jack and JT and Tyleek and dudes that we've been following since they were juniors in high school, right? Jack way longer, but most of them, they're committing before their senior year of football. So they're juniors in high school. They go finish their senior year. They come to Ohio State. All those guys stayed 4 years. We're talking 5+ years and over 6 in some cases that those guys, in my mind, have been Buckeyes. That's a half a decade. And we've known Will Howard to be a Buckeye for a year. And despite the accomplishments, when I think of Will, when I think of Quinshon, I think of him in a great way for sure, but it'll never be like that for me, like it is with the other guys. And I just got the feeling that if I heard the hate about Will Howard or the stuff that people say about him that is just clearly not true, I would get so furious if he had been a quarterback that had been in the system for 4 years, that we've known for 6 years, like a lot of these guys. It's the way I felt when Quinshon transferred in from Ole Miss. And so many people, Buckeye fans, were automatically saying like, oh, he's the better back. He's better than Trey. I was not having that. Even though deep down, I think I kind of believed it. I wasn't going to admit it because Trey was our guy and he felt like, kind of a rental. So I wasn't going for it. Now it did turn out, and I would draft in the same order that Bugler had. Travion is more valuable to an NFL team, in my opinion. And I think that is because there are more Quinshon Judkins in the NFL, that kind of guy, than there are Treys who can create. And I think last year he created a lot more when the block wasn't there. He created for himself more than Quinshon did. Obviously, he's got the take it to the house ability, which we don't see a ton in the NFL. But, 20, 30-yard chunk plays, I'm all for it. I would take Trey first. And thank goodness he didn't get hurt. Can you imagine? This is why I didn't think he was going to come back. Had he come back for his senior year and gotten hurt again, he was already kind of getting saddled with this guy can't stay healthy bug. He comes back his senior year and gets another injury. He's never shaking that. It's with him for the rest of his career. He's not sniffing the second round. But luckily for him, man, it all turned out great. Luckily for us too. By the way, I don't talk much Browns here. I am a Browns fan. as you know, Ohio State fans, a fan base divided when it comes to our NFL teams. We've got a heavy influence of Browns, Bengals, and Steelers fans here on the show and pretty much throughout the fan base. So I don't talk Browns much. But I do think it's of interest when the Browns, Bengals, or Steelers, one of them has the first, second, or third pick. Browns obviously got the number 2 pick in the draft. Cam Ward going to go number 1, right? Pretty safe assumption. Now, they were telling me, my son, and the people who do the draft stuff, that the Browns were going to take Shedeur Sanders at number 2. And as someone who has sat here and bagged on phony bandwagon Colorado fans for the last couple of years, I was dreading Shedeur Sanders because I don't want those bandwagon fake football fans jumping on my Cleveland Browns, and then I got to deal directly with them. Something I wasn't looking forward to. And the gap between Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, to me, is like a 2-round gap. And it just, man, thinking of Tennessee getting Cam Ward and then the Browns getting Shedeur Sanders, it just felt terrible to me. But now I'm starting to hear that the Browns aren't going to take Sanders, that they're going to take Travis Hunter. Now, another Colorado guy, obviously, Travis Hunter is a little bit different than Shedeur. I like him a lot more, for one. I think he's a dynamic athlete. I think he could certainly help the Browns. I don't think he's the best wide receiver in the draft. I don't think he's the best. I don't think he's the best corner in the draft. I don't think they intend to play him both ways. So I don't know why you pick him too. I think he'll have a great career, and I think he'll make a football team happy. Doesn't feel like a number 2 pick to me. So as we're talking about the Browns with pick 2, Abdul Carter also been mentioned. Abdul Carter, a linebacker at Penn State who moved down to edge, that I'm hearing a lot about when we're talking about a certain Ohio State Buckeye who's done the same. Difference there, Abdul Carter got on the field and was a starter and was a very good linebacker first. At any rate, what do you guys think, Browns fans in the comments or non-Browns fans? What do the Browns do with pick number 2? What do you want to see them do? What do you think they'll do? I did a live show on Thursday, and it was a great live because I was settled down. I'm usually not settled. When I do a live, it's like I feel like I'm on stage and I get all fast with my words and everything. But this one was good. It was awesome. It was the biggest audience we ever had on a daily show. Now, there are some special shows we've done, and still the biggest audience we've ever had in here was David Sanders' decision. That was the biggest one we ever had. Bigger than the Texas game, bigger than the national championship. Ohio State fans, I think more than any other fan base in the country, loves recruiting. I mean, we do, guys. I don't think it's close. We love recruiting. Nobody loves it like us. But Thursday's show, the chat was on fire. Love doing those live shows once a week. So we're going to do those now either Thursdays or Fridays at like 10:30. And I'm going to try to stay consistent with that. I'll let you guys know earlier in the week whether it'll be Thursday or Friday, depending on my schedule. But it was a lot of fun. So thanks for joining if you did. Thanks for joining on Twitter. Next time, you could feel free to retweet those if you're watching on Twitter. But please go ahead and like the show for me today. That would be awesome. If you're listening on audio format, please write a review. I could really use a review over there on Apple Podcasts. That would be great. Yesterday, we talked about transfer portal targets. As of now, no visit yet scheduled with Bo Atkinson. That's the defensive end from North Carolina. And Georgia also pushing hard for him. They've scheduled a visit with him. They've also scheduled a visit with the number 1 edge rusher out of West Point. And he is, I got a picture of him right here, Elo Medozi. So he's 6'3", 245. He'll be going to visit Georgia, as well as Joshua Horton, who is the defensive tackle that we talked about yesterday. He's also going to visit Georgia. So Georgia, not playing around, immediately comes and schedules their visits because they need some help on the edge. And the Buckeyes have not yet. And that's okay. You know, it's not like it's too late or anything. But I do often feel like in the portal, they move a little slower than everybody else. Now, it generally works out, so no need to stress about it. But it's still stressing me. And I'm sure there are some of you, it's stressing you when you saw that Georgia's already scheduling these guys. Buckeyes haven't scheduled anyone. It'll all work out. It'll all work out just fine. But Felix Ojo, the Buckeyes' top tackle on the board right now, out of Texas, scheduled an official visit to Colorado on May 2nd to go with his Ohio State official on May 30th, Michigan on June 6th, Texas June 13th, Oklahoma June 20th. And the Buckeyes have been considered Texas's biggest competition. Texas on top, Ohio State a solid second. That's pretty much been everyone's thought here. Ojo talked about his visit to Ohio State, and he said, Ohio State is still very high on my list. This visit did indeed help them, and I would say my list is not as far apart as some people think it is. I really enjoyed my time with the coaches, sitting in the meetings with Coach Bowen, and their message is that they're number one, and I'm their number one tackle, and they've shown me and made me feel like that. My question to you is, when he says, I would say my list is not as far apart as people think it is, do we think he's saying all the teams are kind of jumbled together? Or do we think he's saying between Texas and Ohio State, it's not as far apart? I wish we had some clarification on that. I read that and I'm going, man, I could take that one of two ways. I'm not sure which, but I hope he meant between Ohio State and Texas. At any rate, this week, the Playing Rules Oversight Panel has approved some new rules for college football that we will all want to be made aware of. A couple of them very reactionary to things that happened specifically last year. One of them, a problem that we've had in college football, obviously the faking injury issue. And the rule that they have made to counteract faking injuries is, quote, if medical personnel enter the field to evaluate an injured player after the ball is spotted by the officiating crew for the next play, that player's team will be charged a timeout. If the team doesn't have a timeout remaining, a 5-yard delay of game penalty will be assessed. So, ball gets spotted, ref runs out of the way, player goes down, and the medical personnel comes out to tend to the player. You're getting charged a timeout. You might as well have just taken your timeout, or you're getting the delay of game penalty and the 5 yards. All right, next one, they are changing. I don't understand why. So referees now will only say, when talking about replay, a call on the field has been upheld or a call has been overturned. They will no longer use the terms confirmed, which tells us what? It tells us the call is unequivocally right. We have verifiable evidence that the call we made on the field was right. Or they would say the call stands. And that would mean there wasn't enough evidence to overturn it, but we're not 100% sure if you were correct. So they're doing away with that. Why? That's what I want to know. Why are they doing away with that? Are they doing away with that because when they say the call stands, we know that there's some gray area there on that one, that it was just not enough evidence to overturn it, and they don't want to admit to there being any gray area there? I don't know. I don't know why they would do this. When we first started with this, they would say whatever they wanted. It just kind of naturally found its course that they all kind of conformed to confirmed or stands. Like they just kind of happened that way. When they first started calling these, they were all over the place. They said whatever they wanted. And that's what they kind of settled in on. But now they're making rules on specifically what they are to say, which I think is really strange. If anybody knows the exact reason to that, I was looking for it. I couldn't find it. Another rule, no player can call defensive signals that simulate the sound of the cadence that the offense makes. Defensive terms, move and stem, are reserved for players on the defensive side of the ball only. The offense can't say those. So they're trying to discourage guys from making similar sounding calls from one side of the ball to the other, which I thought they always tried to police. But apparently we need to write this down now. And this one next is coming directly from a bowl game last year. So Brett Bielema in Illinois were playing South Carolina, and Shane Beamer pulled a fast one. So Brett Bielema and Shane Beamer kind of getting a little mix up on the field. We see Shane Beamer going crazy. It looks like Brett Bielema is taunting him. None of us know what's going on. And afterwards, Brett Bielema explained why he was so angry. And he explained that amongst coaches, as a way to reduce kickoff injuries. If a team is receiving the ball and they do the T signal like this to the kicking team, then the kicking team knows they're not intending on returning it. Therefore, when they run down, nobody's really cracking each other. They know that it's not going to be a return. They don't really got to be on their P's and Q's. So that's apparently an agreement they had going on. None of us really knew about. Maybe you did. I didn't. But South Carolina, Shane Beamer had his guy do the T signal. So Illinois running down the field, half speed, 3/4 speed. They're not trying to hit anybody. They know they're not going to return it. And Shane Beamer's guy returns it. On that play, somebody gets injured. Bielema takes that as an opportunity to walk on the field to where the injured player is. And then he goes over to the sideline and he's doing this. Like, what the hell? Of course, at the time, we thought he was taunting them with whatever the hell this was. We didn't know. I didn't know. Maybe you did. So he's explaining this at the end of the game. And then we all realize, okay, Shane Beamer tried to pull a fast one on him. Shane Beamer then went maniac after he tried to pull the fast one. Well, now it's now a rule that the kickoff return team, if they make a T signal, that's it. The play is whistled dead. So they give up the right to return the kick. The play is whistled dead. I think we're going to see this quite a bit. If it was a gentleman's agreement and they were doing it before, I don't see why we wouldn't see this a lot more. So the kickoff part of the game slowly dying. I know a lot of people lament this fact. They can't stand it. At this point, we just see so little action from the thing anymore. I'm just like, whatever. Then, of course, we've got the Dan Lanning, Ryan Day rule. After the 2-minute timeout in either half, if the defense commits a foul with 12 or more players on the field and all the players participate in the play, the officials will administer a 5-yard penalty, but the offensive team will have the option to reset the game clock back to the time at the start of the play. Had this rule been in place for the Ohio State-Oregon game out at Autzen, we would not have seen the big controversy that ensued. Dan Lanning with his smugness after the game in the ensuing days talking about, yeah, I did it on purpose, basically. We practiced situational football. Thought he was just the kitten's caboodle. What he really did was wake the giant. He woke the giant by his little move and then trying to rub it in, acting like he was smarter than everybody else. And he just looked like a total putz. So good for you, Dan. I'm happy that you can't sleep at night and your school has resorted to trying to sue Ohio State's running back coach to throw him off his recruiting game while you get pounded out. Now, we've talked about let's all like the show now. Why don't we? Talked about the defensive line a lot lately. And I just want to have an honest conversation here. And I want to start by just reiterating how I look at things when it comes to Ohio State football, the program that I believe is the number one program in the history of college football. I did a show breaking down why I feel that way. Not an opinion. It's all supported by the data. It's supported by the numbers. So there's 8 blue bloods in college football, 8 blue bloods. And when you hear that, that is an old-time term used to describe the following 8 teams. Now, that phrase has been kind of bastardized in recent years, mostly with the advent of social media, younger generations who not really understanding what it means. And they all put their own kind of personal definition on what they think it means. They also think it's a revolving door. It's not. It's 8 programs. And the reason it's these 8 programs still, the term was coined in the 50s. These 8 programs stood out so far in front of the rest of college football. They still do to this day. And they stand out in everything, in all the numbers, and nobody's going to catch them. So these 8 programs, you can break them down by rivals. Notre Dame and USC, Ohio State and Michigan, Texas and Oklahoma. Those are your first 6. And then you've got Nebraska and Alabama. How do you distinguish who is number 1, who's number 2, who's number 3 out of those 8 blue bloods? When I did it, I took 12 categories that I thought we would all agree if we were sitting down and asking each other, what categories would we use to judge a college football program over its history? And we might come up with things like winning percentage, the most wins, how many All-Americans have they had, how many first-round draft picks, how many weeks in the AP poll, how many weeks in the AP poll at number 1, how many national championships. how many conference championships, et cetera, et cetera. So after I broke it down into categories, I chose 12 of those different categories and I broke it all down. And I went through without computer aid on graph paper and broke all this down with all 8 of those blue. Actually, I went to 15 teams. I did the top 15 programs in college football. So I'm breaking all these numbers down. Now, the goal is at the end, let's say you're looking at Oklahoma. You're going across all the categories and you're going to add up. Okay, they were 5th place in most All-Americans. Now, next, they're 3rd place in national championships. Now, next. Well, the goal is you want the lowest number at the end when you add it all up, right? Because the goal is you want to be number 1 in every category if you can. So you want to be the lowest. So at the end, when I added them all up, my final rankings for the 12 greatest programs in college football, the first 8, the Blue Bloods stayed at the top, obviously. They always will. And those Blue Bloods in order: Ohio State number 1, Alabama number 2, Michigan number 3, surprised me, Notre Dame number 4, Oklahoma number 5, number 6 was USC, number 7 was Nebraska, and number 8, the one that surprises the most people, the least accomplished of all the Blue Bloods, is Texas. Now, there are teams that are on the heels of those programs, but there is a big gap, and that is the 9th and 10th best programs in college football. Number 9, Tennessee. Number 10, Georgia, followed by LSU at 11 and Penn State at 12. So that's our top 12 programs per the JUCK rankings in the history of college football. Now, I ran across a guy last week who did a similar list to mine, and his goal was to rank the Blue Bloods. I immediately respected him when he accurately explained and identified what the Blue Bloods were, the 8 historical Blue Bloods of college football, having won 53% of all the national championships in the history of college football, and having been ranked 70% of the entire AP poll. Talking about bloodlines, the dominance necessary to become a Blue Blood, spanning legendary coaches, current dynasties, and generations. And he goes about it a little differently than I did. Now, he picked a couple of different categories than I did. That's not the huge difference. The huge difference is he weighted the categories in different ways. And a couple of the categories I thought were kind of silly, like Pro Bowls in the NFL. That doesn't really scream to me college football when we talk about Pro Bowls, but not the point. He comes out with a ranking system, and it really nails this thing pretty similar to the one I did, even with adjusting the numbers, which kind of shows you like just how dominant those 8 are. So Ohio State in his ranking, number 1. This guy's a Texas fan. Notre Dame, number 2. Alabama, number 3. Oklahoma, number 4. Michigan, 5. USC, 6. Texas, 7. Nebraska, 8. He also has the same first 4 out as I do, with Penn State as his number 9. At 10, he's got Georgia, where I have them. At 11, he's got LSU, also where I have them. And then at number 12, he has Tennessee. Now, my point here wasn't to talk about Blue Bloods, though I do love to talk about college football history and where Ohio State stacks up in the dynasty, in college football and the whole landscape of the history of the sport. My point here is to talk about the lens through which I view our favorite program. If you are a Buckeye fan, if you're not, your program too. This is the lens that I view all programs. I view a program in what a program should be doing, and by who they've always been, right? So, for instance, if you're looking at the Oregon program, no, they didn't win a national championship, but this program, this is amazing, right? This is not who they've always been. You look at a program like Miami, who's been down for 20 years, but had an excellent run, and now they're coming back up. Like I'm always consistently judging them on what they should be based on their history. Miami's a bad example because they sucked before they were up. Bad example, Oklahoma. There we go. Oklahoma. People talk about Oklahoma going to be better this year. They might win 8-9 games. Oklahoma, number 5 on my list. Oklahoma, similar to Ohio State in the fact that they've really only had 2 periods of down football and Ohio State never had one, but Oklahoma is the next best when it comes to consistent winning and dominance. And I'm just always looking at these programs by who they've always been. Now, in addition to being the number one program in the history of college football, I currently believe Ohio State is the number one program in the country. And I also believe that Ryan Day is currently the number one coach in the country. I'm very fluid with those kind of lists like that, like coaches and who is currently the top program, because I think you can flip-flop at the top pretty quick there. And I think this did flip-flop pretty quick in 1 year from Ohio State and Georgia, with Ohio State just now taking over Georgia having been, not great the last 2 years. And I don't think that their trajectory looks like it's going up. I think it's kind of staying the same or kind of, declining a little bit. Whereas Ohio State consistently, I believe, is getting better on the recruiting trail, on the decision-making, on the coaching staff, on the decisions being made with the coaching staff. And that's the way I see it. So when I'm looking at Ohio State and I'm looking at the team and we're breaking down areas of the team, I'm looking at it through the lens of the best program in college football. And perfection is what you're striving for, to be a championship caliber room in each room. And like I said with Dylan, when so many things are so good about your football program, when you see one that isn't, it sticks out. And maybe you focus on it and make it a bigger deal than it is. That could be a tendency. I fully admit that. But when I'm talking about the defensive line and the depth on the defensive line and recruiting misses over the last several cycles, and just kind of how we are now seeing those recruiting misses really rear their head, which those of us who follow recruiting very closely have been talking about for quite some time, just like we were talking about it on the offensive line. I don't intend it to come off as if I'm saying that this is a bad team or this is a bad room. I intend to say that it's not championship standard. I don't think that means it's going to lose them games, but I'm talking about, is it a national championship caliber room? That's how I'm looking at it. Not that it's bad. Just, is it national championship caliber? I don't believe the defensive line room is currently national championship caliber. Now, I think that's the proper way you should be viewing a program that is consistently in the national championship conversation every year. The goal should be strive for perfection. And when you're striving for perfection, nothing's ever going to be perfect. So there's always something you can improve. So I think it's important to be crystal clear about that. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it isn't good enough to win against most of the offenses Ohio State's going to face. I'm saying I don't think it's currently constructed in a way that I would call national championship quality. And I feel like that only about that one area of the team outside of quarterback, which we have no idea. Defensive line, the only area right now I don't think is national championship quality, unless you get some portal additions or we see a big difference from spring to fall from a couple of guys. Now, I think it's perfectly okay to point those kind of things out. I think that's what the offseason's about. Just like I point out things that are great, that are excellent, I point out things that aren't as well. But there are some people who get very irritated when it's news that they don't like, or they don't want to admit it, or they say things like, people who point that out are complaining or whining, which is a really odd way to describe someone giving their opinion on a position group, that they are whining. That's what we're here to do. We talk about sports. That's what we like to do. And that is not 100% of the time positive. We talk about our team. We talk about the great stuff. We talk about the not so great stuff. None of it is whining. And to be clear, certainly not whining when I just called Ohio State the number one program in college football right now with the number one coach and the number one program in the history of college football. There's no whining in that, but everything's not perfect. And it doesn't need to be. Sometimes you can hide areas that aren't perfect. There's nothing but pride about being a Buckeye fan, and any intelligent fan base would trade places with us in a second. And if we win another national championship in the next 3 years, I think we're officially living in the greatest Ohio State football era of our lives. If you're roughly my age of 45, things are great. Let's make no mistake about that. But there are the people who only want to hear the positive, and they get very upset. They want to argue. You want to call you negative. This defensive line, and I'm not just sitting here saying this out of the blue. Your own head coach has been telling you this over the press conferences throughout the spring 3 separate times. He told us if it doesn't get better, he may have to look at some options. First press conference. Second time he was asked about it. No, it's not good enough, he said. And the third time, the final press conference, our buddy Dylan Davis asked him about it. He said, no, not good enough. There has been some improvement. That's what he said. So don't take my word for it. Don't take anybody's word for it. Listen to the head coach. He's not saying something like that unless it's glaringly obvious. And anybody watching that game, who knows what they're looking at on the defensive line could see it was pretty obvious. We got some issues there. Now, there are people out there who honestly believe that, they do shows like this, and they honestly believe that Ohio State is the best of everything at everything. There are no issues. The guys that other schools beat Ohio State for, they just bought them, had nothing to do with winning a recruitment. That'll never be me. That'll never be me. I tell you how I honestly feel, and sometimes that's good. Sometimes that means a coach at Ohio State dropped the ball and screwed up. Sometimes they did it several years in a row. Sometimes their room is subpar, and sometimes it's not championship caliber. Like, I'm always going to give you what I really believe, and you can disagree with me. That's fine. But understand that that's not whining. That's just talking about the program, which is what we do here. We talk about sports, particularly our favorite football program, which, while it is the greatest in the history of college football and currently the greatest, it ain't perfect, and that's okay. And that's all I got today. Appreciate you guys so much. Talk to you soon. Jug and Bucks out.